hopefully has set the scene for this next thing that we talk about, which is your podcast. So how did it start? We sort of spoke off camera, and I'm sure you guys have spoken many times through your episodes, how you met and how you're good friends and everything. But if you guys give us a quick rundown on, how it all started and the early days, the planning that actually goes into it, because I think a lot of people want to do podcasts, they don't realize how much time and effort goes into it. So take me through the beginning of it all.
Yeah, I feel like, Lenny, you've always kind of talked to me about doing something outside of work, doing a little passion project. And, we kind of talked about that on our own podcast as well, how we got into it. But basically, Aileen had this idea. She is a big podcast listener herself. And at the time, I really didn't listen to many. But now I've started to, which is cool. And so, she just brought up the idea to me about, starting our own little podcast, since we always talk about such a variety of topics. And we thought, why not just put a mic in and see like our friends and other people, see if they resonate with the topics as well.
Yeah, definitely agree with Louise. I think what happened was the idea came up during COVID times. Like obviously everyone had a lot of time to spare. And I think I just discovered podcasts during that period. Like when, I was going for a walk or something, I would just put something on because I feel like that's A, multitasking and B, also like enriching my mind. And I think at that time I realized there just wasn't as much like Asian-led podcasts, maybe a few starting from America, but especially in Australia, nothing. So it was just that start of an idea. And then we would just catch up sometimes and have like 2-hour-long conversations about our lives and our cultures. So I was like, why don't we just do a podcast and catch up at the same time as well as spreading representation? Like it's 2 in 1 and like something out of my comfort zone. But like who knows, like it might become something really cool. So that was just the thought process.
And then the Asian, I suppose, centric topic of Asianness. You guys, we spoke off camera that you wanted to do something in health because you guys both kind of have that background. Is there any like reason other than you both being Asian that you guys wanted to do the Asian centric stuff?
Like I said, like I think it was already a topic that wasn't talked enough about, especially in the podcast space. There was more and more Asian YouTubers, which is really cool, but definitely in the podcast Asian Australian space, there wasn't, in my eyes, enough representation yet, like going back a few years. So that was one of the main motivators. And I think a lot of our conversations were already revolving around some of these topics about culture and how that links to our thinking and also our life. So I was like, do other people think the same way that we do? But surely, like, there's so many Asians here. So kind of growing our community and, getting like-minded people to start talking.
And you can tell that so many people are thinking about the same topics and are talking about the same things because we had that huge thing with like subtle Asian traits. And I just remember like the huge boom and like everyone was in the group and you could just tell like everything was relatable. Like everything like people were posting was like on point. We've experienced it. We've lived through that ourselves. And so it's really cool to be part of that community or like add our voices to this group, like the Asians in Australia, and to know that people might hear our podcast and be like, oh that's exactly how I feel. And sometimes we talk about our feelings or what kind of advice like we would have towards certain topics or like problems, and it's nice to know that maybe someone could hear that and they might learn something new.
Also, sorry.
What was it about a podcast? Because you guys could have had a blog. We don't know how anyone has a blog anymore. You know what I mean? You could have done YouTube. What was it that made you guys lean towards the podcast format?
For me, there's a few reasons. I think podcasting was becoming like a new thing. It wasn't as old as YouTube videos or blogs. So maybe more opportunity to start in that space. And also, I just think, especially if we just do audio format, which is what we've been doing now, it's quite easy to bring out a podcast and create one compared to video format or blog. But that's very subjective. Yeah, that was just my initial thought process going in. Yeah,
I would agree. Like, I definitely thought it was one of the more simpler options until you dive in and you realize there's a whole assortment of things that you have to think about. But yeah, it's a really easy way, given we started kind of like with COVID and everything and living far away from each other. It was very easy for us to set up, do it in our own homes at a time and place that's suitable for us. Yeah.
And how do you guys like to consume podcasts? So, Eileen, you sort of said like if you go for a walk or whatever. For me, I literally listen to podcasts as long as I'm not with someone. So if I'm just eating food by myself, I will listen to a podcast. Go for a walk, any travel to and from the city, whatever, literally any spare time I do. So I guess my point with that is we had some, let's say, constructive criticism, that our episodes are quite long. But I'm used to sports podcasts that go for 2.5 to 3 hours. So I was like, an hour and a half is not that long. So, but then again, that's because I'm used to in my spare time just listen half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour like that. How do you guys like to consume?
At the start, I definitely agree with that. Because I haven't listened to that many podcasts, I always thought, 1 hour, 40 minutes, like it's quite long. And I told Aileen, like, I'd like to keep the episodes to around like 30 minutes max, not realizing that it's really easy to fill the 30 minutes when you're talking to someone about like a potentially very big topic. Now I like to always listen to podcasts on my way to and from work. I think it's just it's just my time to catch up on what's happening. And then my commute is like 30 minutes each way. So the 30 minutes works out really well, but I find that if it's longer, I just continue in my lunch break.
Yeah, I'm very similar. Like I said before, during exercise, I would listen to it unless I really needed a pump up jam and I would listen to music. But, and then also commute wise, I just think instead of like just sitting there on my phone mindlessly scrolling or looking out the window, I feel like it's a bit more productive if I'm actually paying attention to a podcast, maybe learning something or sharing experiences with the podcasters. But knowing myself, I can't put on a podcast and then do study, for example. I can't concentrate as much if there's two streams of information going at once. So when I listen to a podcast, it's very intentional and it's usually about topics that I'm quite interested in and I want to learn more about.
Yeah, so what kind of stuff do you guys listen to for fun?
Yeah. Initially, it was like a lot of relationship advice because we were both going through, I feel like, the stages of like new relationships and like cultivating them and then like long-term relationships. And then I do enjoy just like slice of life content where they just like talk about their day or like, family as well, content like that. Just like fun, light-hearted topics.
Like lifestyle more so than true crime and things like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Wouldn't want to like delve into that late at night,
For me, I like to listen to a lot of psychology-based podcasts. Also to kind of learn a little bit more and like reflect in myself, like why do I feel this way or whatever. And I don't know. I just find psychology really interesting, like the human brain and why people do the things they do. I also like podcasts that, just talk about what is happening in the world, at the moment. I listened to a few about like our referendum and like politics in America as well. That's so weird. Like I feel that's like very not me usually, but I've kind of been getting into it lately.
That's
and
cool.
they're really interesting. Yeah.
It's interesting to know what people actually like to listen to in their spare time. Like, so for me, I'm probably like 90% sport podcasts,
Yeah.
and then 10% would be politics.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, I don't listen to sort of lifestyle or those sorts of podcasts, but it's whatever you can do to try and enrich yourself, right?
That's right. Whatever areas you're interested in and you would want to invest in that time in. Yeah.
So how do you guys find time to do the podcasting? Obviously, anyone who's done one or has been near one knows how massively time consuming it is.
Oh yeah.
You guys both are very busy ladies. Like, how do you fit it in? How do you justify spending the time on it?
You know what's been working really well lately? Aileen sends me her schedule for the next month or so.
Yeah.
And I compare that to my schedule. And then I'm like, okay, these days work for me.
Yeah.
Like pick a day and then we do it.
Yeah. It's essentially boiled down to using Google Calendar. And then my Google Calendar is usually pretty chaotic, but we always seem to find time, which is really good. I think it was easier before when we were just working and I didn't have to study, or Louise is also doing a bit of further training in radiography. Much easier because most of our weekends might be free, or like Friday nights. Less so now, but I feel like because we both prioritize this as a passion project, we always do try and book in times to do the podcast anyway. And like Louise said, we try and limit our time and pre-plan, obviously.
Yeah.
So we don't use up too much time to just flounder around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's good because our organisation levels are pretty similar. So we make sure we're kind of on the ball. We have maybe a group of topics that we're interested in, and then we cull it down to a few and then plan a couple of episodes in advance on those certain topics. And then we just pick and choose and then write extra notes and go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very structured and very planned out.
Yeah,
which is
that's
what I'm
us.
getting from both of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm fairly organized, I think. Like I
Yeah.
sort of have to be with my work and things like that. And then with 2 kids and a wife as well, like time is just so precious. So
Yeah,
for me trying to justify it, there's that saying, I'm not a big one on sayings, but you know, your plants will grow, the ones will grow the ones you water the most, right? So if you actually put time into something, then you will get some sort of growth reward from it.
Yeah, agreed.
So I guess for your podcast then, like what lessons have you guys taken away so far in terms of what it means for people to be Asian in Australia? Is there any 1 or 2 things that you can be like, oh, right, I didn't actually think about that prior to starting this process?
I think it's been really...
I guess, like, what have you found out about yourself, if anything?
I know it sounds really like just we should all know this, but I feel like it's amplified my feelings of like every person's story and background is still different. Like even though like, you know, we're ABCs, we have, I guess, similar upbringings, but I've learnt a lot about Aileen through the year of doing the podcast together. And like we've been childhood friends, so you'd think we'd know everything about each other, but like the amount of new knowledge that I have gained about you is actually kind of mind-blowing to me.
Wow. You're welcome.
So it's cool.
And that's someone you've known for like most of your life, right? And
Yeah.
There's still so many things you can uncover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is a really cool
Absolutely.
process.
Yeah. I definitely agree with Louise. I was literally going to say a similar thing, but like although we're all Asian and we're probably all migrants to Australia or another white country, but we still have very different stories and backgrounds. Some things are very similar and some things can be different. And also talking about big topics like career, marriage, family, like there could be even differing views as well at some point, but it's nice to unpack all of that and kind of go through the psychology a bit in a sense too.
Yeah.
So it's almost like really, it's like a meditation when we have our podcast sessions.
Yeah.
It's like therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the feedback that most of my guests have given us. And like I said, ours are probably a bit different because we're sometimes a bit deeper, but most of the time we just talk nonsense.
Yeah.
But if
Love
someone
that.
sits down and is willing to speak to you for 2 hours about themselves, there's going to be times where it will be therapeutic.
Yeah.
It will be some sort of, introspective thinking.
Yeah.
Which I think, not even for us, but like for our guests, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That we can provide that for them.
Agreed. Also for me, in my workplace, especially in physio, there's not as much Asian physios, unfortunately, maybe just in my workplace and in Brisbane. So although I love my colleagues and I connect with them in some level, like I feel like I also look forward to branching out and making new connections with Asian Australians that have similar backgrounds. And then that's like a different pool of friends that I feel like I can make. So for me, I feel like it's quite rewarding.
Yeah. And that's actually a very good point, because growing up as a minority, doesn't have to be Asian, but any minority in a country, you don't know what it's like unless you actually live it yourself, right?
Yeah.
So like some of my friends, they'll laugh, like, it can't be that bad. Australia's whatever, we're open, we're multicultural, but it's just not like you can't, like I say, you can't explain it unless you actually live through it. So it's cool to have a bit of a community, to be surrounded by other people who have your experiences.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.